Subscribe to both of my YouTube channels, Sharon Winbush and Goddess Sharon. Turn on notifications and share all videos globally. Thank you. Press my name below this video and that will take you to my channel where you will find more videos on this subject and many others. Jennifer Bongine, as defense attorney for Robert Kelly, decides how she wants to move through the trial. Witnesses that she wants to call, testimonies that she feel will be helpful based on what the government has presented. It's Jennifer Bongine's show, so she gets to decide how she wants to paint the picture to the court and to the jury, and parts of the picture that she wants to omit. Jennifer Bongine made the decision that she did not want to concede that the Landfairs were in Robert Kelly's life before Rashana was 17. She did not want to concede that they knew him before that age, that she was ever at the studio, or that she was in his house. So it was Jennifer Bongine's strategy that she would not place the Landfairs in the courtroom in Robert's life to the jury before the age of 17. She would not concede anything before the age of 17. And then she only utilized from 17 on to show how the Landfairs had a relationship with Mr. Kelly. The father played for many albums. The mother went to see Robert privately by herself many, many times in intimate meetings in the studio. Rashana was living with him in the Olympia Fields house, engaging in sex with him and his wife, and how they all remained a part of his life until 2019, and showing text messages between Rashana and Robert in 2019 where she was showing care and concern, and also showing that she had come to concerts of his even after allegedly breaking up with him. And that is why she said her father, Greg Landfair, continued to work with R. Kelly even after the trial. And she said, Rashana responded, yes, that's right. And even after you broke up with him, you kept going to R. Kelly concerts. And Rashana responded, yes. Rashana Landfair was the star witness for the Chicago trial. And her assertion was it was her on the tape, even though she lied about it in 2008. They said they feared or were intimidated by Rob, even though the mother said, no, he didn't coerce them. No, they weren't afraid of him because they were around him for years after that. So it's the defense's responsibility to not help the government in any way, shape, or form. So Bongine's strategy was to not place Rashana in Robert's life before the age of 17. Don't concede that they knew each other before 17. Do not concede that she was in his studio. And do not concede that she was ever at his house. The only place where they were willing to concede is when Rashana was 17. She engaged in sex with Drea Kelly. And I guess that was to show that Rashana was, in fact, living at the house with them, and that she did, in fact, have a relationship once she was of legal age, and it included Drea Kelly, Robert's wife. To also show that Valerie and Greg could not have been intimidated by Robert, could not have been fearful of him if they let their 17-year-old daughter move into his house. To also show that Valerie and Greg could not have been intimidated by Robert, could not have been fearful of him if they let their 17-year-old daughter move into his house. They did need to concede that the Landfairs knew Robert, but they only wanted to concede that it was at the age of 17 and up. and that's the only place where they were willing to concede. The defense didn't want to help the government's case by conceding that Rashana knew Robert before the age of 17. They did not want to concede that she had ever been in his home or at his studio. And the only place they would concede is that Rashana engaged in sex with Drea and Robert in threesomes when she was 17 or 18 or 19 or during that time period. So that they were willing to concede that Drea Kelly actually was having sex with Rashana Landfair. Bonjean wanted to show that Greg Landfair, Valerie Landfair, Rashana Landfair, and her brother and their entire family were a part of Robert's life. And it was amicable. They were friendly. They were not intimidated. They continued to come around. So there could not have been any threats or bribery or anything where they didn't volitionally do things. But Bonjean was only willing to concede the age of 17 and up. I was not in the New York trial, or not called to the New York trial, because it would have introduced Drea and Sparkle and Rashana. And they were not in that case, but introducing them by bringing their name up, saying that I worked around them, would have then given the government an open door to play videos of Drea crying and talking about the abuse that she said she suffered at the hands of Robert. The lead attorney in New York, Nicole Blank-Becker, and Thomas Farinella were considering me as a witness, but I thought better of it once I realized having me on the stand would introduce Drea, Sparkle, and Rashana. And we didn't need to introduce that and muddy the waters with that. But once Kanik took over during the courtroom trial, I was never even contacted by him. But I was in discussions with Nicole and Tom. With the Chicago case, Bonjean considered having me as a witness, but she decided that she did not want to concede that Rashana was in Robert's life before the age of 17. She did not want to concede that Rashana was at his house or at the studio. So she wanted to paint the picture inside the courtroom to the jury and frame it and sculpt it the way she wanted to mold that picture so that they could focus on only the things that she wanted them to focus on and not focus on other details. So that's your job as a defense attorney, to paint a picture and only paint the parts of the picture that you want the jury to focus on. So she wanted to focus on Rashana having sex with the wife, moving in with him, the Landfairs being in his life, the mother going to see him at the studio alone many, many times, the father playing in the band, them mentioning him in the obituary. She was willing to concede all of that to the jury to paint that picture. What she was not willing to add to the frame in the picture was placing Rashana in Robert's home or at the studio or any place out unnecessary to portray to the jury. Already testimony all over social media, pictures of Rashana with Robert when she was younger. There's already evidence all over social media that Rashana knew Robert before 17. Lindsay testified that she would drive her from the studio to school or to home or pick her up at the house. I've certainly said for 3.5 years I knew her from being in the house. Sparkle has said it. Everyone has pretty much conceded that she was around the studio and around Robert's home long before 17. But Bonjean wants to focus the jury only on the parts that benefit Robert. So she was not willing to put me on the stand and have me say she was in the home, placing her at the scene of the crime, and then having the prosecution come up with all these different scenarios. Because once you say she's in the home, that opens the door for them to add more fuel to that fire. So I completely understand that, and it makes sense. She did not want to place Rashana in Robert's life before the age of 17. You're not lying, you're just not highlighting that to the jury. You're only focusing the lens on the parts that you want the jury to focus on, and not adding unnecessary parts that will muddy the waters. So she did not want to paint that picture to the jury that Rashana was in his home or that she was at the studio. So she focused her lens only on Rashana being in Robert's life from 17 years and older. And that's what a good attorney does. They focus the jury where they want to focus them, and don't add more to that picture or that frame than you need to defend. So they weren't denying that she was in his life. They weren't denying anything. They were only highlighting from 17 and up when she was at the Olympia Fields house, when she was around Drea, when the father was playing for him and the mother was going to the studio volitionally, to show that there was no coercion or bribery or anything like that. And that would have been the time frame that the bribery would have taken place. So she wanted to narrow the focus of the jury, not lying, not omitting, not perjuring her client, but merely focusing only on 17 and up.
It's handled. It's handled.